I should probably start at the beginning. My name is Claire Donovan, and I'm an ER nurse at Redwood Memorial Hospital in Eureka, California. I've worked emergency rooms up and down the coast, but I came back here 5 years ago when my mother's health collapsed and the Redwood started calling me home. Nights are quieter here than in Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, but they're heavier too, because in a place like Eureka, every face feels familiar, every tragedy feels like it belongs to the community, and the fog never quite lets you forget how close you are to the edge of the world. I thought coming home meant finding balance, but in this hospital, under these lights, I learned there are things even medicine can't chart or contain. I have learned that a hospital can sound like memory if you stay long enough. Monitors ticking out sentences you don't want to read, oxygen hisses like someone whispering your name, a printer pushing out labels that feel like fate on sticker paper, and the door to the ambulance bay breathing open and shut with the tide of the night. Redwood Memorial smells like chlorhexidine and ocean salt carried in on paramedic jackets. Sometimes the wind is strong enough to slide its cold hand under the doors and remind you we're only a few blocks from the harbor and the fog bank, that gray wall that makes headlights look like secrets. I am a night nurse here, and nights in Eureka teach you the difference between noise and signal. I came back to this coast because I thought I could live with the noise, the fights in the waiting room, the coughs, the groans, the grief. What I didn't count on was the kind of signal that cuts straight through everything you've built to protect yourself. It started like it always does, with a voice on the radio. Incoming law enforcement with one female, voluntary but accompanied. Possible psychotic features. No known medical history. Calm, cooperative. Restraints in place for transport safety. Nights like that make me breathe easier. Psych intake is procedure. It is checklists and safe rooms and paper scrubs. It is the illusion of control you can hold with your hands. The deputies rolled her in just after midnight, rubber soles squeaking on tiles that are never fully dry no matter how hard housekeeping mops them. She was maybe 30, small, that hungry kind of thin you see when someone's been skipping meals and taking long walks to nowhere. Sable hair cut blunt at the jaw, damp from fog. A fine line of salt dried along her temples like she'd been crying, and the ocean had licked the tears away. The restraints were soft cuffs, not leather, and they made the smallest cloth sigh when she lifted her wrists against them to test the give. She looked at everything. The ceiling camera, the toughened glass, my name badge. Her eyes never darted. They slid. Calm, slow, like the beam of a lighthouse. "Hey there," I said, keeping my hands where she could see them. Soft voice, visible palms, slow movements. The choreography you learn when your safety depends on respecting someone else's fear. "I'm Claire. We're gonna do a quick intake. Check your vitals, make sure nothing medical is going on, and then we'll talk about what brought you in." She nodded, almost grateful. The deputies stood back, shoulders dropping the way cops' shoulders drop when they can feel the room making sense again. I took her wrist. The pulse surprised me. Regular, maybe a little fast. 98. Then it eased to 86 under my fingers. A tiny truce. Skin cool, a touch clammy. "Any pain?" I asked, already glancing at the monitor because feeling is one thing, but numbers are a language everyone in this building speaks. "No," she said. The word wasn't empty. It landed like she'd weighed it first, and found it true. Blood pressure cuff whirred around her upper arm. 144/92, then 138/88 after she breathed with me. Big, slow inhale through the nose, out through pursed lips like blowing out a candle you don't actually want to extinguish. SpO2 sat steady at 98 on room air, respiratory rate 20, a hint of hyperventilation that might be anxiety or the after-echo of whatever brought her here. I clipped on the pulse ox, taped the capnography line near her cheek for a minute to watch the waveform, more out of habit than need. The baseline looked good. Pupils midline, reactive. No nystagmus, no obvious track marks on the antecubital fossa, only old bruises yellowing like fading moons. The deputies had already removed her jewelry. All that remained was a plastic ring, the kind you get from a grocery store machine, tucked into an evidence bag with her name I didn't recognize written in block letters. Noel. We're going to draw a few labs, I said, as I set up the vacutainer. Lavender top, green top, gray top, a rainbow of reasons. Just standard. We check for anything that could mimic a psychiatric condition. Electrolytes, infection markers, thyroid function. We screen for substances, even if you don't use. We check acetaminophen and salicylate levels because overdose doesn't always announce itself. We'll do a pregnancy test. It matters for treatment decisions. Maybe a quick EKG. Does that sound okay? She watched my hands rather than my face. I've learned to respect that. Watching hands is a survival skill. It's okay, she said. Do you prefer left or right? I asked, sliding the tourniquet into place, watching the vein rise under her skin like a blue road I'd traveled 1,000 times. Left, she answered. Always left. You'll get a better draw, even though the first attempt is going to blow. It wasn't the words themselves that caught something in me. It was the way she said it, a strange mix of courtesy and certainty, like she wasn't guessing or hoping but remembering. I chose a smaller gauge than I usually would for veins like hers. No sense inviting failure. The needle slid in clean, flash immediately, and then the tiniest give, like the vein had shrugged me off. The line went dark and the vein collapsed. Okay, I said, not looking at the deputies, not giving them the show of frustration they sometimes wait for. You called it. That's rare. Noelle tilted her head. Not smug, not cruel. It isn't rare, she said. It's just not written down yet. The second attempt worked. Green and gray tubes filling in the steady rhythm of a heart I could have mapped with my eyes closed. I labeled them with the patient stickers the printer coughed out, double-checked the numbers, sent them in the pneumatic tube that ran through the ceiling like a hidden artery. 20 minutes for a basic panel at night if the lab is quiet. Tonight the lab was quiet. We did the EKG, leads placed with the little dance that keeps modesty intact in a room where privacy is an ideal and not a constant. Normal sinus rhythm at 90, no ST elevation, no prolonged QT. Any headaches? I asked, as I cleaned the areas where the electrodes had left sticky halos on her skin. Any head injury? Any falls? No. She said again, that measured answer. You're going to ask about hallucinations. I am, I said, because honesty buys you more than soft lies ever do. And I'm going to ask about voices and visions. And if you felt watched or followed, or if you've had thoughts of hurting yourself or someone else. Her lips went white for a moment, as if she'd pressed them between two sheets of ice. The camera hummed softly above us. The deputies shifted their weight in mirror symmetry, boots squeaking again, a sound that would have made me smile under other circumstances, because it meant the adrenaline in the room was evaporating. I see things sometimes, she said, light as a weather report. But not today. What do you see? I asked, not because I needed a catalog, crows, shadows, faces in glass, but because it matters whether someone is terrified of their mind or only occasionally inconvenienced by it. Sometimes there are markers, she said, road flares along people, little red flags where something is going to happen. They blink when no one else is looking. That's not today either. Your red flags are steady lines, like ECGs. Not blinking. Just there. I'm good at keeping my face like a calm lake. It's a skill that grew out of childhood and hardened into practice. I nodded, recorded her answer in the chart, clicked through the drop-downs that flatten living experience into billable codes. She didn't watch the screen. She kept watching my hands, and then she did something that broke the room in two. You know I'm not here for me, she said. Not really. I'm here because of you. The deputies did that collective glance people do when a sentence scrapes against their understanding. I felt the barest acceleration of my pulse and heard the monitor catch it, a small upward notch like a nod. We'll keep this focused, I said, the script steady on my tongue. You're safe. We'll make a plan with the on-call psychiatrist after we clear your labs. Right now, you're medically stable. You've done really well. She smiled, and it wasn't relief. It was recognition. "Claire?" she said, and her use of my name was the clean click of a key in a lock I hadn't realized was built for me. "Do you want me to tell you how you die?" The room went so quiet that the capnography line ticking in a coil on the counter sounded like a metronome. There are sentences that people say in emergency rooms that float away like smoke. Nonsense, threat, the debris of fear. And then there are sentences like stones dropped into water. You can feel the concentric circles moving out from them, touching everything. My hand, which had just finished aligning the paper scrubs against her shoulder, stayed there for a beat longer than it should have. "Noelle," I said. And I heard the shift in my own voice, from clinical to personal, from nurse to woman who lives 5 minutes from the bay and can't stand to walk the pier on her nights off because the water looks like the wrong kind of mirror. "We're going to keep the conversation about you. About keeping you safe tonight." "I know," she said. "That's what you say when the thing isn't about me. It's okay. I understand the choreography here better than you think. We could pretend it's about me, or we could not waste the time we don't have." She lifted her wrists, a polite tug against the fabric cuffs, not to test them, but to make sure I noticed how gentle she was being. "You will be 20 feet from the ambulance bay door," she said. "Not tonight. Not this week. The night will have the same fog as now, a wet silence you can taste. You will be wearing the blue jacket that doesn't fit your shoulders, because you always give your better one to the younger nurse who runs cold. There will be a man with glass in his beard and blood in his mouth, and you'll think it's his blood because he's coughing it into your gloves, but it isn't. It's a woman's. She won't make it. You'll know before the ultrasound, before the tube. You'll know by the way the room smells like copper pennies and seaweed. You'll step back exactly once. You will turn your head to say something I can't hear, and that is when your chest will." She stopped. For a heartbeat, she looked like she was listening to an invisible prompter, trying to find the line she'd missed. Her eyes flicked to the camera, then to the door, then to me again. "It will be fast," she said, like a promise. "That part is mercy. But it will not be still. It will be seen." I did not move. I did not look at the deputies, because I knew what would be on their faces. Irritation, the prickle of superstition, a dawning unease they would later call nonsense while privately rerouting their walk past the ambulance bay for a week or two. I kept my voice where it belonged, low and even, and I felt the shape of a prayer I don't believe in draw itself behind my ribs. "What makes you think this?" I asked, and even as I asked it, I knew I'd given her what she wanted. My attention, my belief, the opening in my armor. "Because it's already written down," she said, and her gaze slid to the label printer as if somewhere inside it was the little slip of paper with my end on it, waiting for the right button. "Because when you walked in, the red flags over you didn't blink. They drew a line, start to finish. Because you already know what it feels like to die and come back." I swallowed. The room realized it was breathing again, and started up with a series of familiar sounds. A siren Doppler fading outside, the soft clack of the pneumatic tube returning empty, the printer spooling another label for another patient I couldn't see. I looked down at her wrists and saw that the cloth had drawn the faintest pink lines where the cuffs lay, as if even gentleness leaves a mark in this place. "We're going to finish your intake," I said, each word a radio tower I could orient to in a fog. "After your labs, we'll talk to psych. You'll get a real bed. We'll find a way to help you." "I am helping," she said, and for the first time her voice thinned at the edges, as if something far away was calling her name, and she was resisting turning her head toward it. "I am doing the only thing I came here to do. You should listen to me now, Claire, while the night is still standing." When you work long enough in the ER, you get used to patients who speak in riddles, in metaphors, in the language of fear and delirium. I've heard dying men describe angels crouched in the corners of trauma bays. I've had methamphetamine patients whisper about insects crawling under their skin. I've sat with women who swore their bones were burning. But what Noelle gave me that night was something else entirely. It wasn't rambling, it wasn't frantic, it wasn't stitched together from half dreams. It was clinical, measured, as though she was dictating a chart I hadn't lived yet. After she said those words, "Do you want me to tell you how you die?" The deputies stiffened, waiting for me to shut her down. Maybe even call psych immediately to speed things along. Instead, I heard myself say, "Why don't you tell me?" It came out before I could pull it back, before my training and common sense caught up. Maybe part of me was curious, or maybe it was something deeper. The way she'd said my name like it was already etched into her. Noelle leaned forward, the restraints still in place but suddenly irrelevant, because her eyes held me pinned more than any cuff could. She began outlining my final moments with a precision that made the room feel too small. She described the fog. Wet, heavy, the kind that clings to your scrubs like a second skin. She described the jacket, the wrong size, the one I wear when I lend my better one to the new grad on night shift. She described the smell, blood and brine together, metallic and oceanic, like the tide had swallowed a pocket full of coins. And then she described the collapse of my chest, a moment when my heart would stutter and fall silent as I turned to call out for help. The deputies exchanged a look, something between irritation and unease. "She's just making threats," one muttered, but I knew better. There was no malice in her voice. She wasn't threatening me. She was certain. I kept my hands busy, charting, cleaning up supplies, resetting the monitor, anything to keep the tremor out of them. My mind, though, was not steady. Because what she described wasn't impossible. We'd lost nurses before. Ambulance bay accidents, sudden medical events and staff. The kind of tragedies that ripple through a small hospital for years. And I remembered one case in Portland, a young nurse who collapsed, mid-shift, dead before she hit the floor. Medicine teaches you to compartmentalize, but it doesn't teach you how to erase. I tried to pivot, to turn her words back into an intake. "Noelle," I said, keeping my voice low, "do you feel like someone is telling you these things? Are they voices? Images?" Her answer was so calm it chilled me. "No, I just know. Like you know a pulse when you feel it. You don't ask who told you. It's simply there." The lab results came back. Normal across the board. No infection. No thyroid imbalance. No substances. Nothing to pin this on but psychosis. And even then, it didn't feel like psychosis. I've seen psychosis twist thoughts into spirals. Scatter logic, like broken glass. Noelle was straight lines, steady rhythm. Too steady. The psychiatrist on call was 30 minutes out. That left me in the room with her, listening to every detail she unfolded. The blue jacket. The glass-bearded man coughing blood. The ultrasound probe still in my hand when I realized the woman on the gurney would not make it. Each detail landed like a nail in wood. I should have excused myself, called for backup, moved on to another patient. But I couldn't. I stood there, listening, because part of me already believed her. And in the rhythm of her words, I felt something worse than fear, recognition. Because 2 years earlier, after a long night shift, I'd been in a car accident on Highway 101. My chest collapsed under the steering wheel, ribs snapping, lungs folding. I should have died, but they pulled me out and rebuilt me with plates and screws. Noelle shouldn't have known that. No one outside my closest colleagues did. Yet when she said, "You already know what it feels like to die and come back," I felt my breath hitch with the memory of asphalt and metal, of light narrowing into a tunnel. That was when I realized, this wasn't just a patient intake. It was something else, something I wasn't ready to name. And in the silence that followed, Noelle smiled faintly, as if she could hear my thoughts cracking open. "You'll understand," she whispered, "when the night finally comes." The deputies shifted again, restless, one of them rubbing his thumb across his belt buckle like a nervous tick. "We'll stay close," he said, but his voice betrayed him. He didn't want to be close. Not to her. Neither did I. And yet I couldn't leave. The ER moves in currents. 1 minute the water is still, only the occasional ripple of a blood draw or a patient sleeping off alcohol in the corner room. The next, the tide crashes in. Sirens, stretchers, voices raised over alarms. That night, after Noelle's words had already dug under my skin, the tide came in hard. The radio barked. 2. Incoming from a multi-vehicle collision on 101. Mile marker 723. 1 male, 1 female. Male conscious, female critical. ETA, 5 minutes. The room seemed to tilt. Highway 101. A man. A woman. Blood. The pieces of her prophecy, rearranging themselves like puzzle fragments into a picture I didn't want to see. The deputies exchanged another look, but this time they didn't mutter anything. One of them asked, too casually, "You all get wrecks on the 101 a lot, don't you?" "Yes," I said, sharper than I intended. "All the time." It was true, but the timing chewed at me. I turned back to Noelle, who had leaned her head against the wall, eyes half closed as if she were drifting off to sleep. But I could see the small, knowing curve of her lips. She wasn't sleeping. She was waiting. I moved fast, readying the trauma bay, pulling out the ultrasound machine, setting up the airway cart, calling for blood units to be released from the fridge. The team flowed into place, muscle memory taking over, but beneath it my mind replayed her words, lining them up against what was about to come. The ambulance bay doors slammed open, and the fog rolled in with the gurneys. I smelled it first, the copper tang of blood mixed with sea air, a wet metallic sting that clung to my gloves even before I touched them. The man came in first, bearded, his chin glittering with glass shards that clung to congealed blood. He was coughing, gagging, red froth on his lips. Not all of it his own. I froze, just for a breath, because it was exactly as she had said, a man with glass in his beard and blood in his mouth. "Donovan, focus." The trauma doc barked, snapping me back. I grabbed suction, cleared his airway, checked for chest rise. Vitals rapid fire from EMS. Blood pressure low but present. Pulse thready. O2 sat struggling. He was alive, and we could work with that. Then came the woman. Pale, blood soaking her shirt front, pooling in the stretcher creases. She wasn't breathing well, agonal gasps pulling at her chest like broken machinery. We lifted her onto the second bed, monitor screaming awake as lead snapped on. Ultrasound probe in my hand, gel cold against her skin. The screen filled with a sea of black where fluid shouldn't be. Blood, too much. She won't make it. The thought wasn't mine. It was Noelle's voice in my head, replayed word for word. The smell of pennies and seaweed. The woman's chest, a cavern filling too fast. I pushed the thought down, pressed harder with the probe, scanning, mapping the bleed. "She needs the OR now!" I shouted. But even as we wheeled her toward the doors, I knew. The surgeon knew. Everyone in the room felt it in their bones. And as the chaos whipped around me, the bearded man gagging into suction, the woman's body fading on the stretcher, my colleagues moving with grim speed, I turned my head, just for a second, toward the psych room down the hall. Noelle was standing in the doorway, still cuffed, deputies flanking her, but standing. Her eyes met mine across the distance, and she didn't smile this time. She only mouthed a single word. "Now." My chest tightened. For a terrifying second, I felt something seize under my ribs, a phantom echo of collapse. It passed, but the chill it left didn't. I wanted to believe it was coincidence, that her story was vague enough to fit any night in Eureka, that I was only seeing patterns because she had planted them. But I couldn't ignore how each detail had lined up like beads on a string. The jacket, the man, the woman, the smell. After the woman was pronounced, we stood in the trauma bay, gloves red, the monitors silent, the bearded man stabilized enough for ICU. But all I could hear was Noelle's whisper in my head. "It will be fast. But it will not be still. It will be seen." I washed my hands 3 times, but the smell wouldn't leave. And when I finally sat to chart, I realized I couldn't remember whether I had written down her words or only kept them carved into me. Sleep never comes easy after a night like that. Even when the shift ends and the monitors fade into memory, Your body stays lit up like a switchboard, replaying every beep, every gasp, every last look in a patient's eyes. That night, I didn't even try to go home. I stayed in the staff lounge, sat on the vinyl couch with a blanket over my shoulders, listening to the vending machine hum like a tired generator. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in the psych room doorway, her lips shaping the word now. The hospital at dawn has its own kind of loneliness. The night staff are ghosts, drifting toward lockers and parking lots, and the day crew shuffles in with coffee cups and clean scrubs, still smelling of home. They don't see the residue we carry. They don't smell the blood that won't scrub out of your skin, the copper that lingers in the nose long after the trauma bay has been cleaned. I told myself I'd go back to charting, that maybe if I buried myself in documentation I could shake it off. But the psych intake file was already waiting in the system, flagged for follow-up. Her words weren't there. Just the clinical facts. Female, approximate age 30, calm affect, cooperative, lab results normal, no tox. A routine intake. My notes looked sterile, detached, as if written by someone else entirely. There was no trace of what she had said about me. For a second, I wondered if I'd imagined it all. Maybe I'd been so tired, so worn down by the shift, that I'd let her vagueness seep into my bones and twist itself into prophecy. But then I remembered the way the deputies had shifted uneasily, the way their eyes had darted to mine when she spoke. They'd heard it too. I found them still in the building, finishing paperwork in the security office. Last night, I said, keeping my voice steady, when Noelle spoke. You heard it, didn't you? One deputy frowned, looking anywhere but at me. The other cleared his throat. People say things, he muttered. Crazy things. You work psych long enough, you learn not to take it home. That's not what I asked. The first one finally looked at me. His eyes were tired, the kind of tired you get when something unsettles you and you've been chewing on it all night. We heard it, he admitted. Doesn't mean it means anything. But his voice lacked conviction, and we both knew it. Later that evening, when the sun had already bled into fog again, I found myself walking the hall toward psych holding. I shouldn't have. She was no longer my patient. She was the psychiatrist's responsibility now. But I couldn't leave it alone. The deputies weren't there this time. Just a sitter outside the room, reading a paperback with one earbud in. She nodded me past when I showed my badge. Noelle sat cross-legged on the mattress, restraints gone now, her paper scrubs loose around her shoulders. She looked up as if she'd been expecting me. You're not supposed to be here, she said gently. Neither are you, I answered. She smiled, tilting her head, studying me the way a doctor might study a lab result. You came back because you want me to tell you more. I came back, I said, because I need to know why. Why me? Why here? She closed her eyes, took a breath that seemed to draw in the whole room. Do you know what makes this place different from the others? Redwood Memorial isn't just a hospital. It's a net. Everything in this town, every accident, every overdose, every secret, it all ends up here eventually. The fog carries them in, and the walls keep them. That's why you came home. You thought you could anchor yourself in it. But it's the net that has you now. Her words pressed against something in me I didn't want to admit. That every shift here felt heavier than the ones in Portland, that somehow the ER in Eureka seemed to absorb more than just bodies, that it collected stories, tragedies, patterns. Stop, I said, sharper than I intended. You don't know me. Her eyes opened, steady and dark. I know enough. You think your accident on 101 was a warning you survived. But it wasn't a warning. It was a rehearsal. The words landed like a physical blow. My chest tightened, my hands prickled. She leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice to a whisper. You'll fight it when it comes. Of course you will. You'll call for help. You'll reach for the cart. You'll try every trick you know. But you can't fight the script. It's already written. I took a step back, suddenly aware of the sitter in the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming above, the sterile air pressing down. I wanted to tell myself she was sick, delusional, that this was all meaningless. But I couldn't shake the feeling that she was simply reading a chart that existed somewhere beyond my sight. That night, I couldn't bring myself to walk past the ambulance bay. I took the long way around, through the side exit, into the fog. And for the first time in years, I felt afraid of the place I had always trusted to keep me grounded. Days bled into nights after Noelle's admission, and still her words clung to me. The ER is supposed to teach you resilience. Each case a compartment, sealed and stacked so you can move on to the next. But with her, nothing sealed, nothing stacked. Everything leaked. I tried to bury myself in the rhythm of shifts. Broken wrists, chest pains, drunks pulled out of the harbor, the endless carousel of the human condition. My colleagues joked in the lounge, charted in quick shorthand, scrubbed their hands raw and went home to kids or quiet apartments. And yet, whenever the ambulance bay doors groaned open, my chest would tighten, bracing for the smell of pennies and seawater, bracing for the figure she'd already drawn in words. I caught myself watching my jacket choices at the start of shift, passing up the blue one, offering excuses to the younger nurse so I could keep the warmer coat. And each time, I felt foolish, superstitious. But superstition has teeth when it feels like prophecy. The psychiatrist wrote her up as psychotic disorder, unspecified. She was transferred to a state facility after 72 hours. Routine. Paperwork filed. Case closed. My coworkers stopped mentioning her within days, their attention pulled by new traumas, new emergencies. But for me, she never left the building. I saw her in the hallways when I was tired enough. Her slight frame, her steady eyes, her voice threading through the static of monitors. I asked myself the questions medicine never prepared me for. Did she know because she'd seen something real? Or did her words take root in me so deeply that I've started building my own ending out of them? Is the prophecy external, or is it the infection of belief itself that will bring it true? I replay that night endlessly. The bloodied man. The dying woman. The fog pushing its fingers through the ambulance doors. Each detail, like a signpost pointing toward a future I can't reroute around. I've tried to rationalize it. Coincidence. Suggestion. My own exhaustion. And yet, each shift I step into Redwood Memorial, I hear her voice echo inside me. You already know what it feels like to die and come back. And I wonder if that was the real key. If dying once only made me easier to read. I've told no one else. To speak it aloud would make it too solid, too permanent. So I carry it quietly, like a weight tucked in my pocket, pressing against me with every step through these corridors. When I walk past the ambulance bay now, I feel the draft of cold air roll across my chest like a premonition. I think about the night she described, the fog, the jacket, the blood, the collapse, and I wonder when it comes, if anyone will remember that she told me. Or if it will just look like another sudden tragedy in a hospital that has collected too many. The case will always haunt me. Not because of what she said, but because of the part of me that believes her. And that belief has become my shadow, walking every night beside me in the ER, waiting for the moment when her prophecy and my reality finally meet.